Well, 3 months ago, on this exact day in February, I stood before you, got an opportunity to preach from Leviticus in our series on Leviticus. At that point, I was asked to speak about the Levitical purity laws. If you remember, some might note the topic or the main thesis of that message was that we were on the edge of life and death, right? The Levitical purity laws point to the fact that we're on the edge of life and death. Little did I know that the next night I would literally be right there on the edge of life and death. I was pulled unconscious out of a van that had been driving down I-75 at a high speed. I had passed out, and two good Samaritans thankfully stopped by, and they pulled over on the side of the interstate. My family, thankfully, was okay, but I was unconscious on the ground. They knelt beside me in the freezing cold grass there at night and prayed with me. And as I regained consciousness, and I asked that question, and then the most terrifying question ever is, like, is my family okay? And they said yes, and praise God. And then they're like, can you feel your toes? Or they're like, yes, praise God, I can feel my toes. And, I didn't know at the time, but I had fractured a number of bones throughout my spine, my neck, ribs, all kinds of different complications. But praise God, got through that moment where I was on the edge of life and death. And at that moment, I really needed help, right? All I could think about was I was lying there shivering in the grass, waiting for the ambulance. I need help. I need an ambulance. I need to get to see, some doctors. I'm going to need some help of radiologists and nurses. My family needed some help. They needed a place to stay and figure out where they were going to be that night as I was in the hospital. We needed a lot of help. Now, it's easy in an emergency to cry out for help. But today, as we're in this series called Say What You Need to Say, the words that we're challenging you to say today is, I need help. That's the title of the sermon. I need help. We're going to be in John chapter 5, if you want to turn there with us, John chapter 5. And in John 5, we're going to meet a man who needs a lot of help. But before you get there, I just want to set the stage for why we need to ask for help. Now, a lot of times, it's easy in the moment of chaos, but in the moments where urgency lacks, where there's a gradual slide into a problem, it's not quite as easy for us to ask for help. Maybe there's a stagnant recovery going on in your life. Maybe you just don't have answers. Maybe you're walking alone and you don't have anyone to help you. Secularists and politicians love to use kind of cliche phrases like, it takes a village, or you might hear them quote a supposedly African proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? Which is a good cliche, good statement. I think we see value in that. But we know as Christians, we know that from the beginning, our need for help is from the very beginning of creation, right? God has this thing theologians call aseity, right? He is completely eternal in his self-existence. He's self-sufficient. He's not dependent on anybody. But us, we don't have that aseity like God. We are dependent on him for every breath. We are dependent not only on him, but on his God-given community around us. And so from the beginning, we know God created a helper for man. Adam needed a helper. He wasn't good enough on his own. In the Old Testament books of poetry, in the Old Testament books of wisdom, they tell us a lot about how we need help, right? Proverbs says there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Proverbs says, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. The Psalms talk about our need for helpers. And in Psalm 133, it says how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together and in unity. A Song of Solomon talks about how husbands and wives can help each other. I'm not going to get into that part today. We'll skip over that one. Ecclesiastes, we'll put this one on the screen. It says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Our church treasurer, Leanne, is a very experienced scuba diver. She's trained a lot of people over the years. She's taken a lot of excursions all over different reefs and different places. Very experienced. And even her, though, she never does a scuba dive alone, right? She's got to have a partner, because she's told stories about there's been times where her tanks ran out of air and she's needed a helper, somebody to take her back to the surface. Otherwise, she couldn't have made it. There's been another time where she talks about how she got caught in fishing line underwater. If you can imagine how scary that would be. She couldn't go forward. She couldn't go back. She needed someone to help her get out of that. Now, you think, wow, she's done so many dives. She's trained so many people. Why couldn't she just talk to the fishing line and say, hey, do you know who I am? I'm an experienced scuba. No, that's not really how it works, right? She couldn't say, hey, I've trained famous people like Sheryl Crow on how to dive. Yeah, the fishing line wouldn't respond to that, right? We need a helper. You can't do it on your own if you're caught in a situation like that under the water. After our wreck, we had a number of people who came up to myself and Audrey and would ask us and say, hey, is there anything we can do? We would love to help you. And Audrey would probably, thank you so much. We won't ask you, but thank you. That was kind of her funny response. Now, there were dozens and dozens of ways different people were able to help us, and we're so thankful. People found ways, and it just, for us, what was like a really scary situation and facing that recovery and everything became this beautiful part now of our testimony and our experience and stories we'll tell for over the years about how our church came together and supported us and walked with us. There's so many different ways. But in a group, in a size of this many people in a room, there's probably a bunch of different problems we probably could use help with, right? There are different struggles we go through. There's a full spectrum, however, of wisdom and a full spectrum of experience of people who could speak into the problems that we have and can walk with us. And so we're going to see today Jesus finds a man in need of help. In John chapter 5, he had found no answers for 38 years. We're going to start in verse 2. It says, now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Now some believe that this pool at Bethesda had healing powers, that every day the angels would stir up the water, and the first person in there after the water was stirred up would experience these healing powers. People would go there to this pool, Bethesda, to find hope. They would go there to beg. Now, we're not exactly sure what percentage of people, if any, were actually healed by these waters, but some speculate there was actual, some kind of underground spring maybe that was bubbling up and causing this. But verse 5 says, one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew he'd already been there a long time, Jesus said to him, do you want to be healed? And the sick man answered him, sir, I have no one to put me in the pool, when the water stirred up. While I'm going, another one steps down before me. And Jesus said to him, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And at once the man was healed. He took up his bed, and he walked. Now, Jesus' question to him when he first encounters him, it almost seems like maybe it could have been an offensive question. You don't exactly know what kind of tone it was said in. Because you can imagine this man, he had been sitting by this pool for hours and days and weeks and months and years and even decades just hanging out there by this pool. And he could have, replied with some cynicism or sarcasm, just said, what do you think I'm doing? Just laying here getting a tan, What do you think, Jesus? But Jesus' response, or Jesus' question to him was a question out of compassion. Do you want to change? Pastor Kyle Adelman, who's up in Louisville, Kentucky, he's been at Southeast Christian Church 25 years, and he said this about his time in ministry. He said, the longer I'm in ministry, the more I understand why Jesus asked this question to the man. He said, there's a lot of people who want to hang by the pool, but they don't want to be healed. They come to church, but they don't really want change, right? They'll listen to messages or open their Bible, but they don't want to do anything different. Maybe they'll even listen to Christian music in their car, but they're not going to change the way they behave. Kind of reminds me of maybe a stubborn 2-year-old, and it's time for them to do potty training, right? They're ready to go, they've got all the tools they need, but you can explain to them, hey, it's really, if you start going in the potty, right, it's not stinky, right? It must save mom and dad money. But the 2-year-old say, no, I like the diapers. I want to wear the diapers. And you try to reason with them. You try to say, I want to help you. This is good for you and me, right? It's good for both of us. And they say, no, I'm comfortable here where I am. I'm just going to keep making a mess in my pants. When people are in recovery, you've got to do the things you need to do to get better. You've got to do the physical therapy. You've got to start the process. You've got to start developing these neural pathways in your mind and these muscle memories that can help get you the place where you need to find healing. So what keeps people from asking for help in the first place? First of all, first point I'd like to make is fear. Maybe fear of change, fear of risk, or fear of a different routine. You might say, you know what, I'm not doing well in my finances, haven't done well, but hey, I'm alive, I'm at least making it by. You might say, maybe my relationship with my family, it's not healthy, but you know what, it is what it is, and I just live with it. We settle for what we know. We accept what's in front of us. We're okay with just being the same kind of husband or father that we grew up knowing, because that's just what we know. There are some benefits of being by the pool. And I, as somebody who has experienced a level of sympathy and care and concern and even some benefits in my time of need, I kind of know a little bit of what it's like to want to hang out by the pool. See, I got one of these things that was pretty amazing. This here, it's a temporary disabled tag. I love this thing. This was one of the best perks. If you ever break your neck, at least you get one of these, right? It's wonderful. And so, by the time after about 5 weeks, I got cleared to take my neck brace off, and that was not, and it was, it was a pain. But at that point, I was probably not supposed to use this as much anymore, right? I can walk. On the bright side, unfortunately, my daughter broke her leg a few weeks later, right? Hey, we put this right back on. And so it was nice. I kind of want to hang on to it. It's not expired yet. And so I kind of want to hang on to some of the benefits. Sometimes the sympathy, the low expectations, the taking it easy, those kind of things can want to keep us hanging out by the pool. A second reason people don't ask for help is denial. Denial of reality. Like this man, he was surrounded by these disabled, sick people, begging people. It had become just normal to him. He had kind of found his spot in there. He might have thought, this is who I am now. There's a documentary on YouTube of this woman who had a 300-pound tumor that she had surgery on. And it's very fascinating because she kind of makes some of the comments like, okay, why did you wait so long to get 300-pound tumor removed? You think about this like, put it in perspective. If one of those heaviest bags of dog food they sell at the store is like a 50-pound, those giant bags. That's huge, right? You think even after that much, it's like, probably should do something, right? But you let it get to the point where it's like the tumor is literally the size of a completely stocked refrigerator on this. You let it get to that point and then ask for help. But she said, I thought it might go away. I thought maybe it stopped growing. Sometimes I thought it had leveled off or was getting smaller. But that's a denial of reality. Third reason people don't ask for help is they're ashamed of their condition. Shame. We don't want to admit the condition. We don't want to admit we got a tumor growing in our homes. We don't want to admit we got a tumor growing in our hearts. It's a thing called pride, right? But the gospel teaches us to humble ourselves. So we've got to humble ourselves if we're going to get the help we need. You've got to humble yourself to take that first step to go to maybe a grief support group or go to a substance abuse support group, go to a marriage counselor, seek out help. It takes humility. A fourth area that keeps people from asking is when they're afraid. They're afraid of action, afraid of, this is going to require some changes in your life. You can't hang out by the pool. You're going to have to start living more of a normal life, and maybe that's fearful for some. In John 5, verse 8, Jesus kind of gave this action command when he said, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. This disabled man's response to Jesus when he was talking about why he wasn't healed was he didn't use the words like yes, I could get to the pool, or no, I didn't. He said, I can't. he said, I can't get to the pool. Now, there's these doctors named Frank Mirinth and Paul Meyer. They wrote a well-known book called Happiness is a Choice. And in this book, they wrote these lines, as psychiatrists, we cringe whenever Christian patients use the words, I can't, and I've tried. Any good psychiatrist knows that I can and I've tried are merely lame excuses. We insist that our patients stop saying can't and start saying won't instead. So, instead of saying, okay, I can't get my spending under control, they say, no, you need to say, I won't get my spending under control. You know, encouraging a wife having marital problems, is she saying, I can't encourage my husband? And they say, no, say, I won't encourage my husband. When you change your can'ts to won'ts, that helps you to gain perspective. Stop making excuses, and you need to start taking action. This is true for us. There's areas in our life when we say we can't, but the reality is we just won't do it. There's an article in the American Psychologist magazine that confirms a shocking reality, very surprising. You may not know this, but through research, they found that men are less likely than women to ask for help. Anybody aware of this? Evidently, the research says that men are less likely to go to a doctor for medical help. And when they do go, they're less likely to ask questions. And men are less forthcoming with medical information. I think that's probably true. I've seen it in my own life. One of the greatest blessings in my recovery from our accident was when we had a friend that would go with me and kind of be an advocate at some of my doctor's appointments. I didn't know what to ask for. Sometimes the doctors rush in and they're busy and you just kind of forget things. And I think, well, maybe I'll just Google it. I don't know. I don't want to bother him. But for me, I had Mimi, who is a very experienced in the medical field, and she's rattling off. All I'm thinking in my head is like, can I ride roller coasters? And then she rattles off, what about the neuropathy? What about this treatment plan? What about the timeline? And she got all these questions. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing to have this kind of help there that I needed in my time of need. And so we got to recognize our limitations. We've got to remember the importance of asking the right questions. The man at the pool, he didn't ask necessarily the right question. He wasn't going the right way because his thought was like, I just need to get to the pool. Like, so he's asking Jesus. He's explaining, trying to justify what was going on, why he hasn't been healed. And he's like, thinking, Jesus, if you just get me to the pool, maybe, Jesus, you can be my pool boy, right? My mule. Take me down there, Jesus. And Jesus says, no, I don't need a pool. He says, get up, take your mat, and walk. But now there's this bizarre ending to the story in John 5, verses 10 and 11. It says, so the Jews said to this man who had been healed, it is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to take up your bed. But he answered them, the man who healed me, the man said, take up your bed and walk. And so this is just a really good reminder when people change, when people get help, there's often others that are going to be there to discourage. And in this case, they had this Pharisaical attitude, this mindset where they're more concerned with the law than recognizing that was the lawgiver that just healed him, right? So when we're making a change, it can be good for us to recognize, okay, who are those that are standing in the way? Who are those that are discouraging? And for us as a church, it's important for us to remember not to be those religious gatekeepers, but to be the encouragers, pointing people to the work of Jesus. So that was this man's story. His story was changed for 38 years. He had gone every day, had been just begging, waiting by the pool, and then one day Jesus changed him. So how about our stories, though? How can our stories get help? How can we help one another and find help we need? First of all, we got to go through some biblical essentials here, and I've got 4 points to make. First one is this: seek healthy community. I asked a counselor friend of mine this week, what are some trends you see in people seeking help, needing to seek help more? And he said, more and more people are living in isolation, and when you're in isolation, you're more vulnerable when you're alone. And people feel vulnerable even asking for help, but asking for help is actually the strongest thing you can do. 1 Peter 5 describes Satan as a roaring lion, right? And so if Satan is a roaring lion trying to destroy people, how would a lion go about attacking, right? They're going to find, first of all, the people that are outside the pack. The stragglers are the easiest to attack. And in the same way, the key for us is we've got to be connected to the pack. Connect with people before you need help. The more you are known, the more people know how to help you when those times come up. Yeah, maybe some practical ways to do this. Show up, of course, to one of our more than a dozen Bible study groups throughout the week. Those are great groups that find community. Todd talked about today, Discover SEC is a great entry point for those kind of things. Another great way to be part of the pack is to serve your neighbors, serve your church family. We've got 18 different serving teams throughout our ministries here. And in addition to that, all kinds of serving projects that you could jump in with. And at the very least, maybe for you, the challenge would be to instead of just kind of sneaking in and out of services, to maybe stay a little bit longer. I know some people aren't big small talk people, and small talk makes you uncomfortable. But the value is when you get to know people and they get to know you, you'll be surprised at the connections you can make. And those connections ultimately will lead for you to be able to serve those people and for them to serve you back. And if you don't think you're going to need help, you're just denying yourself, right? Someday you're going to need help. Someday you're going to need to be known. And so why not start now? My sister, about 5 months ago, went through a really tragic situation. She lost her husband of 14 years. They had 4 boys, young boys. And one of her greatest testimonies through that situation, and I've been blessed to kind of grow my relationship with her and talk weekly, but she's talked over and over about just how God had prepared her for that moment of tragedy. Her and her husband, they had moved to Nashville as newlyweds nearly 14 years ago. And even before they had kids of their own, they started serving at church. They served in kids ministry, and they continued to do that. They made a lot of great relationships. But she talked about how even after all those years, really specifically the past couple years, God had put new people in their life, new really close family members, people in their small group, that they just felt like this exact moment, that God had wrapped them around with helpers and people that knew them and new ways to serve whenever this tragedy happened. It's kind of the natural life cycle of Christian service. It's kind of how it happens, how God forms this beautiful community to come around you at the moments you need a helper. A second point, we can ask for help, is we need to ask. Just ask. Jesus said this in Matthew 7. He said, ask and be given to you, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will be open to you. So, ask for the Lord for help. So pray on your own, but also you need to have other people ask with you, right? Have other people advocate to the Lord on your behalf. But we got a prayer list around here, and that thing gets a lot of mileage, right? It gets a lot of mileage. Not only our staff and our staff meetings, we got a Tuesday night prayer group. I was walking by Thursday, our prayer group, or our seniors group doing a Bible study, and they're going through the prayer list and praying for everyone on there. Man, if we don't know your needs, we can't pray for you. So if you get in the hospital, please just let us know. Let us know. We want to come pray for you. We want to visit for you. Maybe it's a ministry staff team. Maybe it's part of our care team. Our care team has really multiplied our efforts to make sure people have advocates, people have encouragers and prayer partners, and people just to sit and talk to. Next essential component of receiving help is you got to say yes. You got to say yes. Some of the best advice I received in my recovery is just say, hey, allow people to serve you. You're going to want to say no, but allow people to serve you. Because sometimes, when people are serving you, it can be a hassle. Maybe it's not on your time schedule. It's not convenient. Maybe they might not do things for you the way you would do them. But you'll be surprised how much you need the help. When you deny people the opportunity to serve you, you're kind of denying them a blessing, right? They're being blessed through this. And one of the greatest blessings I've had in my recovery is getting to know people on a deeper level from our church, people that have served my family. It's been really encouraging. A fourth essential area for getting help is we got to bother others and let others bother you. Now, what I'm saying with this, of course, the caveat, not saying you want to monopolize people's time. You don't want to take advantage of others. You don't want to let others repeatedly take advantage of you. But when we're serving others, sometimes that just uncomfortableness goes with it, right? Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 42, "Give to one who begs from you. Do not refuse to one who would borrow from you." Now, don't mistake this passage. Don't think this is just some kind of a blanket license to say, hey, we've got to go give every panhandler our money. No, that's not how it works. But Jesus is saying we've got to live a generous lifestyle. We've got to let people be willing to, use our time, take advantage of our time, take advantage sometimes of our resources, because as Christians, our highest priority is not that we shouldn't be taken advantage of it. Our biggest priority is humility and service to others. We got to look to Jesus. We want to follow his example. Personally, we want to follow his example also collectively as a church. That's why we've got this care ministry. We're trying to organize the way we serve people like Jesus would serve people. We've got an awesome care team. They've got big hearts and dreams and visions to see people ministered to. I know some of the people on the care team are Carol, Mimi, Mary, and Leanne, and some of them are going to be out in the lobby area out front today, just to answer any kind of questions. They'd also love to have your help too. If you want to find ways you can connect with that care team and just kind of be organized to serve together, they would love to get to know you as well. One of their just motivating scriptures has been Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. It says, "Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds," right? This encouragement, finding ways to give one another the support we need. So if you got the gift of compassion, encouragement, you love meeting needs, you want to help walk people through recovery or wellness, all those kind of things, or if you just want to start exercising some of those gifts, maybe think you could grow in some of those and God could use you, that team wants to, help you point to the Lord. Our ultimate helper in all of this is the Lord. And so I want to close today with the 121st Psalm, which begins with a question. I'm going to read the question in white here, and then when we get to the yellow, I'm going to ask us to responsively read the answer to this question together. So Psalm 121 asks this question. It says, "I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where does my help come from?" Everybody together? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. So today, in recognition that our help ultimately comes from God, we need to commit to being unafraid, to ask for help, unafraid to serve those in need of help. Let's pray. Father, you are such a good helper to us. Your goodness is evident. You've surrounded us with a really, really amazing community. And thank you for those around us that we have. Thank you for our brothers and sisters in Jesus. Lord, would you help us to say those words that I need help whenever there's a moment we need that. Would you help us as well to provide those needs and services to others as we seek to follow Jesus' example. Pray this all in his name. Amen.